The roar is a tidal wave of sound, a physical force that crashes against the stage, vibrating through the floor and into the bones of the one who stands there, bathed in a celestial white light. Millions of pixelated eyes watch from the darkness, a constellation of smartphones held high, each one a prayer to the new gods of the digital age. This is the apex of modern existence, the moment of ascension, where a simple name becomes an incantation, chanted by a legion of followers who see not a person, but a reflection of their own aspirations. The adulation is intoxicating, a nectar sweeter than any wine, promising immortality through viral velocity. Every smile, every gesture is magnified 1,000 times, broadcast across the globe as gospel. In this blinding instant, fame feels indistinguishable from omnipotence, a permanent throne built upon the shifting sands of public opinion. Then silence. The wave of noise recedes with a brutal suddenness, leaving an unnerving vacuum in its wake. The celestial light is extinguished, replaced by the cold blue glow of a single screen in an empty room. The god is now mortal, scrolling through a feed of comments where devotion sours into derision with the speed of a single click. The arena of 1 million worshippers shrinks to the stark loneliness of 4 white walls. A headline flashes, announcing a replacement, a newer idol for the ever-hungry crowd. The statues of yesterday are torn down in the digital town square, their names becoming cautionary tales whispered in forgotten forums. The fall is not a dramatic explosion, but a quiet, hollow implosion, the sound of a gilded cage door swinging shut, trapping a ghost who can still hear the phantom cheers. Screen cuts to black. A calm, measured voice emerges from the void. They drank the sweet poison of applause, believing it to be the elixir of power, a primary and fatal error. They mistook the warmth of the spotlight for the fire of true influence, forgetting that the crowd that crowns you today is the same mob that will drag you to the gallows tomorrow. You, who now watch from the shadows, you seek this same intoxicating light, believing it will make you a master of your destiny. But you are merely aspiring to be a more beautiful puppet, dancing on strings held by hands you cannot see. They sought to be loved, a fragile foundation for any structure of ambition. I am here to teach you a different art, not the art of being seen, but the art of shaping what is seen, the art of building a throne not of air and adoration, but of stone and fear. Do not mistake my world for a distant, dusty portrait. The Florence I knew was a crucible of ambition, a chaotic laboratory where fortunes were forged and shattered in the span of a season. City-states clawed at each other for dominance. Papal armies marched under banners of faith to secure earthly kingdoms, and the common man was but a blade of grass beneath the trampling feet of mercenary captains and banking scions. It was an age of brutal transparency, where power did not hide behind polite fictions or digital avatars. It was wielded with the dagger, the poison, and the precisely worded decree. This renaissance of art and philosophy was also a renaissance of strategic cruelty. Look closely at your own time, at the swift currents of your networks and markets, and tell me you do not see the same turbulence, the same predators circling the same prey. The stage is merely larger, and the lighting is different. I am Niccolò Machiavelli. My name has been contorted over centuries into a caricature, a synonym for scheming and godlessness. But I was never a king, nor a conqueror. I was a servant of the state, a diplomat, a secretary who stood in the quiet rooms where history was decided. I listened to the whispers of envoys. I studied the ledgers of war, and I watched great men rise on the tide of popular favor, only to be dashed against the rocks of political reality. My knowledge was not born in a library, but forged in the unforgiving furnace of political failure, my own. It was from the bitterness of exile, stripped of all station, that I began to write not about how men should live, but how they truly do. My authority comes from the scar tissue of defeat, which offers a clarity victory can never provide. You, who navigate this new digital landscape, are the modern prince. Your domain may not be a tract of land in Tuscany, but a kingdom of influence, built on streams of data and perception. Like the new princes I observed, you have acquired your position through fortune or ability, but your grasp upon it is precarious. You are surrounded by a court of followers who offer endless praise, yet their loyalty is as ephemeral as a passing trend. Your competitors smile to your face while plotting to dismantle your reputation in the dark. You believe your visibility is a shield, but it is in fact a target. It is to you I now speak, not as a historical artifact, but as a counselor, offering the same unvarnished truths I once wrote for Lorenzo de' Medici. Let us begin by dismantling the grandest lie of your age, that attention is synonymous with power. Fame is a banquet hosted in your honor, but you do not own the hall nor the food. nor the loyalty of the guests. They celebrate you only as long as you entertain them. The moment your performance falters, they will move to the next feast without a second thought. Power, true power, is not the art of being the celebrated guest. It is the art of owning the entire city's water supply. It operates in the foundations, in the unseen aqueducts of influence and obligation. Fame makes you a spectacle. Power makes you a necessity. The famous are adored, but the powerful are obeyed, often grudgingly, but always reliably. Therefore, this lesson will not be a comforting affirmation of your ideals. We will not speak of winning hearts and minds through virtue alone, for that is a fairy tale told to children and fools. We will instead perform a clinical dissection of influence. We will examine the tools that are effective, not those that are noble. I will teach you to distinguish the applause that solidifies your throne from the applause that merely decorates your prison. The knowledge I offer is a cold and heavy key. It can unlock the gates to a lasting dominion, or it can unlock chambers of your own ambition from which you may never wish to return. The choice to turn it, as always, rests with you, Prince. Observe the monarchs of your modern court, the figures who reign from thrones built of light and data. Their power is measured in metrics you call engagement, a constant, frantic dance for the fleeting approval of millions they will never meet. They believe this digital scepter grants them authority, that the chorus of likes and shares is a mandate from the people. Yet this is the most fragile of all empires. It is a kingdom held aloft not by fortifications or loyal armies, but by the ever-shifting whims of an unseen, anonymous crowd. The digital prince does not command his subjects. He endlessly petitions them for relevance. He is not a sovereign but a supplicant, perpetually anxious that the algorithm, his true master, will turn its favor to another, leaving his throne to evaporate into the ether from which it came. You must first understand the nature of the entity you seek to please. The crowd, whether gathered in a Florentine piazza or a digital forum, is a singular beast with an insatiable appetite for spectacle. It is driven by passions, not principles, by novelty, not loyalty. It will elevate a commoner to the status of a god for the sheer entertainment of it, and it will tear that same god down for the catharsis of seeing the mighty fall. Their adoration is not a gift of loyalty. It is a temporary loan granted in exchange for your continuous performance. To build your foundation on such treacherous ground is to construct a fortress on quicksand. The love of the people is a powerful intoxicant, but it is a disastrously unreliable political tool, for their love is given without reason and can be withdrawn without warning. Consider the fate of Girolamo Savonarola, a humble friar who, for a time, held the great city of Florence in the palm of his hand. His sermons were his weapon, his piety his armor. The people flocked to hear him, weeping at his prophecies and casting their worldly treasures into his bonfire of the vanities. He was the most famous man of his day, his influence seemingly absolute, but his power was a reflection of the people's fears, not a structure of his own making. When the Pope in Rome, a man of tangible power with armies and alliances, grew tired of this troublesome priest, the tide turned. The same crowds that had hailed Savonarola as a prophet stood by silently, or perhaps even cheered, as he was tortured and burned in the very square he once commanded. His fame was a magnificent, towering inferno that ultimately consumed him. This dependency creates the most insidious of prisons, the gilded cage. The famous individual is no longer a free agent. They are a character, a brand, a carefully curated image that their audience demands they inhabit at all times. Every word is scrutinized, every action judged against the expectations they have fostered. To deviate from the script, to show weakness, complexity, or to simply change one's mind is to risk immediate exile. They become trapped in a performance of their own success, terrified to evolve lest they alienate the very followers who grant them their sense of worth. This is not freedom. It is the most elegant form of servitude, where the chains are forged from adoration, and the warden is the faceless gaze of the public. Herein lies the central, brutal truth of this game. If you are merely famous, you are not a player, you are a piece. Your visibility, which you mistake for a weapon, is in fact a beacon that attracts the attention of true strategists. They see your influence over the masses not as your power, but as their opportunity. Corporations, political movements, and discreet power brokers operate from the shadows, using your curated celebrity as a vehicle for their own agendas. They harness your credibility, your connection with the public, to move opinion, to sell products, to legitimize their causes. You are the magnificent knight on the chessboard, moved forward into glorious battle, celebrated for your charge, but ultimately sacrificed by a hidden hand to secure the king. The transaction is seductive. They offer you wealth, access, and a continuous supply of the adoration you crave. In return, you offer them the one thing they cannot easily manufacture: public trust. You become a conduit, a beautifully ornate channel through which their will flows to the people. You believe you are building your own legacy, while you are, in reality, merely a highly compensated mason laying the bricks for theirs. A true ruler understands that public opinion is a resource to be managed, a field to be cultivated and harvested for a specific purpose. He does not allow himself to become the crop, growing and swaying at the whim of any who would seek to reap his influence for their own gain. Therefore, the first lesson in the acquisition of power is this: you must fundamentally reorient your ambition. Cease the desperate pursuit of being liked. The applause of the crowd is a siren song that lures ships to their doom upon the rocks. Instead, you must cultivate a strategic detachment from public opinion. Begin to see the world not as a stage upon which you perform for approval, but as a complex terrain to be mapped and navigated. Your goal is not to win the affection of the masses, for that is fleeting and worthless. Your goal is to understand and master the hidden levers that move them, for the love of the people is a passing weather system, but the mechanics of human nature are eternal. To grasp the mechanics of power, you must first acknowledge the two great forces that govern all human endeavors. The first is Fortuna. Imagine her as a violent, unpredictable river that, when in flood, lays waste to the plains, sweeping away homes and harvests. Most men are powerless before her, building their lives on the riverbank and praying she remains calm. They attribute their successes to her favor and their failures to her wrath. This is the realm of circumstance, of luck, of the sudden chaotic shifts in the market or the culture that can elevate a fool and ruin a genius overnight. To believe you can succeed by simply hoping for Fortuna's kindness is to be a passive observer of your own destiny, a leaf carried by a current you cannot steer. The counterforce to this chaos, the only true weapon a leader possesses, is virtue. Do not confuse this with the modern, neutered concept of virtue, which speaks of meekness and moral purity. Virtue, as I understand it, is a constellation of martial qualities: courage, cunning, foresight, adaptability, and, when necessary, a capacity for calculated ruthlessness. It is the skill of the engineer who, seeing the raging river of Fortuna, does not pray for the floods to cease, but builds dams and levees to contain the water and redirect its immense power for his own purposes. Virtue is the human will imposing order upon the chaos of existence. It is the synthesis of the fox, who is clever enough to recognize traps, and the lion, who is powerful enough to frighten away the wolves. These two forces are in a constant dance. Fortuna may govern half of our lives, but the other half is left to us to be shaped by our virtue. She is a fickle goddess, but she is a woman, and she is more often won by the impetuous and the bold than by the cautious and the reverent. She creates the conditions, a political vacuum, a new technology, a moment of public outrage, but it is the man of virtue who recognizes the opportunity and seizes it with audacious speed. A lucky break, a moment of viral fame, is a gift from Fortuna, but this gift is meaningless without the virtue to transform that fleeting moment of attention into a durable structure of power. Fame is the gust of wind. Virtue is the skill to set the sail and steer the ship toward a chosen destination. If you seek a mortal embodiment of virtue, look to Cesare Borgia, Duke of Valentinois, the brilliant and brutal son of Pope Alexander VI. He emerged in an Italy that was a fractured, violent chessboard of competing powers. He began with nothing but his father's backing and a formidable ambition. He did not seek to be loved by the people he conquered. He sought to be obeyed. He understood that alliances were temporary, that promises were breakable, and that loyalty was a commodity purchased with either gold or fear. Borgia did not ride the currents of his time. He was a storm in his own right, a man who saw the chaos of Fortuna not as a threat, but as a canvas upon which to paint his masterpiece of a state. Observe a masterclass in the application of virtue. Having conquered the Romagna, Borgia found his own captains, the very men who led his armies, conspiring to betray him. A lesser leader, one reliant on popularity, might have tried to negotiate, to win them back with promises. Borgia did not. He feigned reconciliation, luring the treacherous commanders to the town of Sinigaglia under the pretense of a celebratory banquet. As they entered, disarmed and smiling, believing they had outwitted their master, Borgia's loyal guards seized them. He did not grant them a trial or a public spectacle. He had every one of them quietly strangled that same night. It was an act of supreme treachery, an unforgivable sin by the standards of conventional morality, but it was politically perfect. In a single silent evening of methodical violence, Cesare Borgia achieved what years of popular campaigning could never have accomplished. He did not just eliminate his enemies, he annihilated the very idea of conspiracy against him. The news of the Sinigaglia deception spread throughout Italy like a cold dread, and it was more effective than any army. It established his reputation as a man of absolute resolve, one who operated on a different plane of strategic thought. This singular act of terrifying virtù generated more real, tangible power, fear, respect, and obedience than all the fleeting adoration enjoyed by 1,000 famous princes. He demonstrated that he was the architect of his reality, not a mere actor within it. Here, then, is the second lesson. True power is not a passive inheritance from fortune. It is an active conquest. It is the product of a relentless, disciplined application of your will to the world around you. You must stop waiting for favorable conditions and begin cultivating the virtù required to master all conditions. Study the terrain, anticipate the flood, and be prepared to act with a decisiveness that will shock your enemies and awe your allies. For the world is a dangerous place, and Fortuna does not reward the timid. She offers her greatest prizes only to those who have the courage to seize them, using whatever means are necessary. Your fame is, at best, a tool to begin this process. Your virtù is what will see it through to the end. Your modern world is obsessed with a naive creed you call authenticity. You are told to share your vulnerabilities, to be transparent, to present an unfiltered version of your life. From a strategic perspective, this is utter madness. The wise prince understands that his public persona is his most valuable diplomatic tool. It is not a mirror of the self, but a meticulously crafted mask designed to elicit a desired response from both the masses and his rivals. The first principle of converting attention into power is to divorce your inner reality from your public performance. Let the world see the generous, magnanimous, and resolute leader they wish to see. Your true calculations, your doubts, and your ruthless ambitions must be guarded in an impregnable inner citadel, for transparency is a vulnerability that your enemies will be delighted to exploit. While this public spectacle of virtue keeps the crowd entertained, your real work must be done in the shadows. Power is not consolidated in the open forum, but in the private chamber. Use your visible reputation as a key to unlock doors behind which the real players convene. Here you will forge not friendships, but alliances. These are cold transactional agreements based on mutual interest and a clear understanding of reciprocal advantage. The currency in these negotiations is not popularity, but leverage, information, and the credible threat of action. While your followers are debating your latest public statement, you must be quietly securing the allegiances of those who control the networks, the capital, and the institutions. The fame you project is merely the light that allows you to see the true landscape of power and identify whom to approach when the room is dark. No prince can rule alone, but a court of famous associates is a nest of future rivals. Your true strength lies in an inner circle that is ruthlessly effective and utterly invisible. These are your hands and eyes, individuals chosen not for their charisma, but for their loyalty and specialized skills. Their power is derived entirely from you, and their anonymity is their greatest asset. They must operate in the spaces where your virtuous reputation cannot be stained, undertaking the necessary but unseemly tasks that are essential for maintaining control. You must bind these few to you, not with the promise of fame, which would make them dangerous, but with shared purpose, immense trust, and the certainty that your fall would mean their absolute ruin. While you stand in the light, they must be comfortable wielding daggers in the dark. It is therefore essential to understand the economy of appearance. A prince need not possess all the qualities men consider good, to be merciful, faithful, humane, and religious, but it is absolutely necessary to seem to possess them. Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, for everyone can see, but few can feel. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. That small number will not dare to oppose the opinion of the many who have the majesty of the state to defend them. You must cultivate a reputation for piety and integrity, as this disarms your opponents and provides a moral justification for your actions. The appearance of virtue is a shield. Use it to protect yourself, especially when your actions are anything but virtuous. This leads us to the most vital and for you most uncomfortable question. Is it better to be loved than to be feared? One should wish to be both, but because it is difficult to unite them in one person, it is much safer to be feared than loved, when one of the two must be dispensed with. For love is preserved by the link of obligation which, owing to the baseness of men, is broken at every opportunity for their advantage. But fear is preserved by a dread of punishment, which never fails. Affection is a sentiment your subjects grant you, and they can revoke it at their pleasure. Fear is a sentiment you impose upon them, and its control rests entirely in your own hands. A wise prince must rely on what is his, not on what is others. Look at the titans of your own era. Consider the founder of a vast digital empire, a man known not for his warmth, but for his terrifying vision and unforgiving standards. He is not loved by his employees, who speak of a culture of fear and relentless pressure. The media portrays him as a cold and ruthless operator. Yet, his commands are executed with flawless precision. His company bends the world to its will, and his rivals live in constant dread of his next move. Now compare him to a competitor, a leader celebrated for his congenial personality and beloved by his staff. His company, mired in indecision and a desire to please everyone, is slowly bleeding relevance. The former, who chose fear, built an empire. The latter, who chose love, is presiding over a beloved museum piece. Here lies your third lesson, the core of my practical science. The arsenal of a true prince must be dual-natured. You must master the theater of public virtue while simultaneously mastering the mechanics of private coercion. Build your power structure in the shadows. Forge alliances based on interest, not affection, and cultivate an inner circle bound by loyalty and secrecy. And never forget that while the love of the people is a pleasant luxury, it is the fear you inspire in your enemies and your allies that will be the ultimate guarantor of your position. To turn the empty calories of fame into the enduring sinew of power, you must learn to wear the mask of the saint and wield the tools of the executioner. Let us speak of endings. For every reign, especially one built on the ephemeral currency of fame, must face its twilight. The spotlight is a restless eye. It never lingers in one place for long. The adoration of the crowd, which feels so solid and eternal at its peak, is in fact a tide, and all tides must recede. To the merely famous, this is a terrifying prospect, an existential death that precedes the physical one. They chase relevance with increasing desperation, becoming parodies of their former selves, unable to accept the fundamental law of the spectacle. The audience always demands a new show. He who mistakes his temporary celebrity for a permanent state of being is a fool who has built his house on a melting glacier, enjoying the view without noticing the foundation disappearing beneath him. You must internalize the distinction between the echo and the voice. Fame is the echo. It is the reverberation of a past act, a sound that travels far and impresses many, but it grows weaker with distance and time until it fades into nothingness. Power is the voice. It is the source of the sound, the capacity to speak, and by speaking, to cause action and reshape reality. The famous man becomes addicted to the sound of his own echo, believing it to be the measure of his strength. He does not realize it is merely a trailing indicator of a power he has already spent. The true prince, however, cares little for the echo. He is concerned only with maintaining the strength of his voice, ensuring that when he speaks, the world is compelled to listen. Consider the desolate landscape of forgotten idols, the musician whose songs once defined a generation, now a trivia answer. The actor whose face was once a global icon, now relegated to nostalgic compilations. The viral sensation who for a fleeting season was the center of the world's conversation, now a digital ghost haunting a dormant account. They commanded armies of fans and oceans of attention, but what did they build with it? Nothing. They were the echo, and when the original act was over, the silence that followed was absolute. Their thrones are empty, not because they were overthrown, but because the throne itself was an illusion, a trick of light and sound that vanished when the audience grew bored and looked away. Contrast these phantoms with the enduring legacy of a family like the Medici of my Florence. Cosimo, Lorenzo, these men understood power. They were not merely famous, they were the hidden architects of their age. They used their immense wealth and influence not to bathe in constant public adoration, but to build durable structures of power. They created a banking empire whose reach extended across Europe, financing kings and popes. They sponsored art and philosophy, not just from vanity, but to shape the very culture of their civilization. They governed the Florentine Republic not from an official throne, but from behind the curtain through a web of patronage and obligation. The Medici are not a nostalgic memory. Their actions built a world that still stands today. They were the voice. The ultimate conversion of influence, then, is to make your power independent of your own mortal presence. It must be embedded into something that can outlast you, an institution, a business, a political dynasty, a code of laws, an ideology. This is the only path to true immortality. A wise prince does not labor to make his name beloved by the masses for a century. He labors to construct a machine that will continue to execute his will for a millennium, even if his name is forgotten. The goal is not to be remembered, but to remain consequential. Your personal charisma is the scaffolding used to erect the building. A true architect knows that the scaffolding is meant to be removed once the structure is sound. Here we arrive at the final, most revealing test of your power. It is not measured by the size of the crowd that cheers for you on your day of triumph. It is not found in the number of followers who praise your name when fortuna smiles upon you. The true test comes in the silence. When the music stops, when the lights are turned off, and when you are stripped of your titles and public favor, who still takes your orders? Is there a loyal inner circle that will still act on your command? Is there an organization you have built that continues to function according to your design? The famous have fans, and fans desert. The powerful have agents and structures, and they are most effective when the cheering stops. Therefore, this is your fourth and final lesson in this grim art. You must treat your moment of fame as nothing more than a brief and dangerous opportunity. It is the chaotic period of resource accumulation. You are gathering the stone, the timber, and the iron, but these materials will rot in the field if you do not begin construction. Your most important work is not the performance on the stage, it is the drawing of the architectural plans in private. You must become the founder, the lawgiver, the architect of a legacy that no longer requires your celebrity to sustain it. The choice before you is simple and stark. Will you be the fleeting, beautiful echo that fades in an instant? Or will you be the resonant, enduring voice that shapes the silence for centuries to come? I can feel your judgment across the centuries. I can hear the silent accusations forming in your mind as you listen to these instructions. Tyrant, monster. This is the philosophy of evil. You recoil from the coldness of this calculus, for you have been raised on stories that tell you power can be gentle, that leadership can be an act of love, and that the good man will always triumph. Your entire moral framework protests that the path I have laid out is a descent into darkness, a forfeiture of the very soul in the pursuit of a hollow crown. You believe there must be another way, a better way that does not demand such a heavy and terrible price. This revulsion is an honorable sentiment. It is also a profound and dangerous weakness. Let us re-examine your most cherished words. You speak of mercy and cruelty as if they are simple opposites, but a prince's actions cannot be judged by their immediate appearance. Consider the leader who, to avoid being seen as cruel, refuses to make an example of a single traitor. His inaction is perceived as weakness. It emboldens other conspirators, and soon a rebellion blossoms, forcing a civil war that costs thousands of lives. Was his initial mercy not, in the end, the most profoundly cruel act of all? Conversely, a prince who swiftly and publicly executes that first traitor is called a butcher, yet his single surgical act of cruelty prevents a wider conflict and saves countless lives. The preservation of order is the highest form of mercy a ruler can offer his people. The annals of history are a testament to this truth, a lesson written in the blood of failed states. The great Carthaginian general Hannibal led a diverse army of mercenaries across hostile lands for 15 years, and not once did he face a significant mutiny. His soldiers were bound to him by a powerful awe, born from his reputation for swift and inhuman punishment. He was feared. Contrast him with the celebrated Roman commander Scipio Africanus, a man famed for his clemency and kindness. His legions in Spain, taking his gentleness for weakness, rose up against him. His love was answered with rebellion. The moralist will praise Scipio and condemn Hannibal, but the student of power is forced to ask, who had better command of his men? Who achieved his objectives with greater efficiency? You must accept that the moral obligations of a prince are different from those of a private citizen. The common man is responsible for the salvation of his own soul. A prince is responsible for the salvation of the state. He is its physician, and he cannot shrink from the scalpel or the cauterizing iron if the health of the body politic is at stake. To sacrifice the stability and security of millions for the sake of maintaining his own personal sense of moral purity is not virtue. It is the most grotesque form of selfishness. He must be prepared to risk damnation in the next world to ensure his people can live safely in this one. His hands may be stained, so that theirs may remain clean. Here is the truth you have been protected from your entire life. The world is not a place for gentle souls in positions of power. Men are, by their nature, fickle, ungrateful, and driven by self-interest. They will follow you out of love only so long as it is convenient. To believe you can govern these creatures through kindness and mutual respect is to attempt to build a dam out of hopes and dreams. It is a beautiful sentiment, and it will be the first thing to break when the river of human nature begins to rage. Fear is the only foundation that is not eroded by this tide. It is the cold, hard bedrock of reality upon which a lasting state can be built. Fear is the leash by which the shepherd protects the flock from the wolves and from their own foolishness. And so you have arrived at the precipice. This knowledge, once heard, cannot be unheard. You now see the grim mechanics beneath the stage of history. You can no longer plead ignorance. Now you must choose. You can turn back, horrified by this revelation, and return to the comforting morality of the herd, content to be a sheep, ruled by wolves, who are not afraid to make these choices. Or you can accept the world as it is, not as you wish it would be. You can shoulder the immense and lonely burden of this understanding and begin to think and act like a prince. This is the point of no return. Are you an actor or are you the audience? Do not mistake this argument as a celebration of mere brutality. Chaos and arbitrary violence are the tools of the incompetent tyrant. I speak of a fear that is precise, calculated, and predictable. For fear is at its core a form of respect for consequences. A state built on the volatile emotion of love is subject to the whims of the populace. But a state built on the rational calculation of fear provides a stable and predictable environment where all can prosper. The subjects of a feared prince may not sing his praises in the street, but they can build their businesses, raise their families, and sleep soundly at night, secure in the knowledge that the law is absolute and the state is strong. This is the final, irrefutable argument. The choice to be feared is not a descent into evil. It is the embrace of order over chaos. The lesson is now complete. I have pulled back the velvet curtain of civility and allowed you to gaze upon the cold, hard gears of the machine that moves the world. The pleasant fictions that comfort the masses. That power is a reward for goodness, that history bends toward justice, that men are guided by noble ideals have been stripped away. You can now see the hidden grammar of fear and interest that underpins all human enterprise. The world will no longer appear to you as a grand moral play, but as a chessboard, an arena of competing wills where victory belongs not to the righteous, but to the strategic. This knowledge is a permanent lens. You cannot unsee what you have now seen. The true test is not in what you have learned, but in what you are prepared to do. For 500 years, men have debated the purpose of my writings. Was I a teacher of tyrants, offering a manual for the consolidation of cruelty? Or was I a patriot, revealing the dark arts of rulers so that the common man might recognize them and defend himself? I will tell you now that my book was intended as a mirror. When a tyrant looks into it, he sees his own face and finds a justification for his nature. When a free man looks into it, he sees the face of his enemy and finds a blueprint for his destruction. The knowledge I have shared with you is no different. It is a tool as morally neutral as a blacksmith's hammer. In the hands of a builder, it creates a home. In the hands of a destroyer, it crushes a skull. You are now confronted with this tool, and you can no longer return to the blissful ignorance of the quarry. You understand the stark difference between the fragile, gilded cage of fame and the cold, stone throne of power. Every choice you make from this day forward will be weighed against this understanding. To continue to chase likes and followers is to consciously choose servitude, to beg for a more comfortable position in a prison of your own making. To seek power, however, is to embark on a lonely and arduous path, one that will demand moral compromises that your old self would have found abhorrent. The choice is no longer between good and evil, but between a celebrated impotence and a consequential existence. This knowledge confers a heavy burden. To see the world through this lens is to lose the comfort of innocence. You will now perceive the hidden motives in every act of charity, the strategic calculation behind every public statement of virtue. You will see the subtle applications of fear and leverage that structure your society. You cannot go back to being a passive spectator in the theater of the world, for you now understand how the scenery is moved and how the actors are manipulated. The only remaining question is what role you will choose to play. Will you use this knowledge merely to defend yourself, to avoid the traps laid by others? Or will you use it to go on the offensive, to become a strategist in your own right? The silence that follows my voice is your new classroom. The tools are in your hands. The world, in all its brutal and glorious reality, lies before you. I have shown you the path from being a celebrated piece in someone else's game to becoming a player yourself. I have taught you how to channel the chaotic river of Fortuna and how to cultivate the relentless agency of virtue. I have revealed the necessity of the mask and the utility of fear. The rest is not a matter of instruction, but of will. So the curtain is now drawn, the mechanics of power laid bare. Tell me, Prince, what will it be? Will you continue to mendicantly beg for applause, or will you finally begin to build your throne?